She just wanted to go home. Her frail condition required a caretaker accompany her, but there was no room in her own house. Why? Because she'd invited friends to stay. Senior investigative reporter Steve Andrews found once you do that and people move in, it becomes very difficult to get them out. Tonight, Steve tells us about a Sarasota woman struggling with terminal cancer and guest who turned into unwanted pests.
I want to be home.
It wasn't bad enough that 55-year-old Julia Seifert was battling terminal breast cancer. At the end of March, she had to go to court to evict her so-called friends, Matthew and Marilyn Burgess, from her Sarasota house because they wouldn't move.
I'm incredibly shocked that people who were my friends could be so inconsiderate.
According to her court file, Julia took the Burgesses, who were down on their luck, into her home in early October.
I couldn't imagine them being homeless. My heart went out to them. I asked them to help me keep the house clean and tidy.
She says the Burgesses helped pay a portion of her utility bill for a couple of months, then stopped. According to court records, Julia was desperately ill and needed a caretaker. She couldn't move a caretaker in until the Burgesses moved out, something she'd been asking them to do since the beginning of February. Instead of moving out, Julia says the Burgesses moved more of their belongings in, filling up her living room.
We don't have any comment at this time because there's a bunch of misunderstandings.
In early March, she went to hospice to stabilize some serious symptoms. Hospice determined Julia was too weak to go home without a caretaker in place, so it transferred her to a nursing home, where she stayed at taxpayers' expense, and where we met her March 29th.
I don't want to die in a nursing home.
So her friend, lawyer Michael Fry, filed an eviction complaint on Julia's behalf against the Burgesses.
Julia's rights and her needs trump theirs, absolutely.
Because?
It's her house. She wants to go home and live and die in her own home.
The Burgesses didn't budge. So on the day we visited Julia, we went to her house to ask them what was up. Matthew Burgess, we learned, was home but wouldn't answer the door. On that door, handwritten letters explaining their side of the story. This one says, "It's unlawful for you to attempt to remove us or our property from this house. You must follow Florida eviction law procedures."
And sadly, you know, just based on the way things are these days, you've got to be really hesitant to try to extend that olive branch and help people out these days, because it can come back and bite you.
According to Tampa attorney Mark Albin, Florida law says house guests become tenants if they stay for a prolonged period or pay any part of the mortgage or utilities. To get them out requires an eviction. That can take up to 2 months.
You know, in your last days on earth, you know, not to be able to go ahead and expire on your own property if you want to because of some, you know, people like this. So I think it's just egregious, and it's horrendous what they're doing.
Photojournalist Gordon Dempsey caught Burgess outside early in the morning of April 2nd and asked him to call me.
I'll think about that. It's some real complicated issues, and they're end-of-life issues that are much more complicated than represented.
Burgess did call a few days later. While he told me they'd be gone as soon as possible, on April 9th, he filed court papers asking the judge for more time so he could hire a lawyer.
It's not real. It can't be real, but it is. And it's tragic, and it's despicable.
I met with the Burgesses. They called 2 days later, April 12th, and said they had a new place to live and would move that weekend. That wasn't soon enough. Julia died in the early morning of April 14th.
I'm just so sad and disgusted by it, and I'm really hoping that this story alerts people in the community of the possibilities of what can go wrong when you take somebody in your home.
Julia Seifert never returned to her house. She died in a nursing home, her own home still occupied by so-called friends who would not leave.
Rest in peace, sweet girl. It's over.
Now, the Burgesses did leave Julia's house the morning of April 22nd, a week after they told me they'd be out, and a couple of days after our promos for this story began hitting the air. Later, on the 22nd, this past Monday, a judge granted Julia's estate an eviction, ordering the Burgesses out. Now, this isn't the first time folks have had problems getting them out of their homes. 2 other women I spoke with claim the Burgesses overstayed their welcome at their houses as well. So a word to the wise, before you offer a friend or relative a place to stay, understand, once they move in, if they start receiving mail, pay a part of the mortgage or utilities, they're tenants. And if they don't leave when you ask, you're going to need a lawyer to help get them out. And it's not as simple as just grabbing their stuff and dumping it on the front lawn anymore. That could put you in jail.
What did the Burgess tell you when you met with them? What did they have to say?
Well, they said that they were looking for a place, but they couldn't find anything appropriate. They said they had provided a wonderful Christmas for Julia, helped around the house, created a family-type atmosphere, which was all well and good. But the bottom line was, she owned the home. She wanted them out. To get them out, she had to authorize legal action from her deathbed. Not quite the peaceful ending that she envisioned.
You know, you sit here and you think about this story. Here Julia was trying to help out people who needed a place to stay so they wouldn't be homeless, and basically she became homeless in doing so.
Yeah, watch out who you invite into your house.
Well, that's an important lesson we've all learned from this story. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.